Welcome to the Salty Life Podcast.
We are your hosts, Paul and Sav, entrepreneurs, parents, business owners, and yes, Christians.
Getting salty has a few different meanings in our culture, some good and some not so good.
We are here to help you add some of that good saltiness to your life by giving advice based off of our own experiences
and mistakes,
and providing you with some practical solutions to navigating this crazy world.
Let's get salty. Welcome back. Today we're going to discuss a topic that has really become really important to us. Can food and drink be an idol in your life? Paul, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So it's just something that, it's been at the top of my mind the last 3 or 4 months in particular. It's something I'd never really thought about before. But as I've been on my health journey now since January of this year, I started to really realize how much I've struggled over the last 2 or 3 years. And then it just I realized that there was more to it, I guess. And that, I think God, at least for me, was calling me to get your crap together. I don't know how else to say that. But it's been an interesting journey because it's something that I've struggled with way, way more than I ever could have imagined. So, yeah.
I feel like I've struggled with food my entire life. So for me, it's been I've done the up and down, the wishy-washy. And I noticed earlier this year, looking back at pictures from my Facebook timeline, from the years past and my memories, that I've literally lost and gained the same 30 to 45 pounds every other year for the last 5 or 6 years. And so for me, that was a huge wake up call to be okay, hold on. Are you really, is it even worth it if you're going to just gain it all back? So I've been on this path of trying to just understand my body and understand how food affects me and stuff. So we're both in totally different places, and we're going to kind of talk about our revelations, how we've gotten to where we are, the things that we've struggled with in the past, and give you some insight on how we're raising the boys to not have the same issues with food that we've had.
Yeah. And like we always say, we're not trying to be judgmental towards anyone, wherever you're at. It's just, I never thought about food being an idol or being an issue or being something that could stand in the way of my faith growing. And then, like I said, we'll get into it more later, but having a really bad sweet tooth and battling with not being able to give that up and just failing completely multiple times. But what does that say though, if you can't give that up?
Well, and I'd also say both of us, we've been really, really transparent with our relationship with alcohol over the course of our life, and, how we've kind of overcome those issues. And I think sugar has been harder for both of us. The food is harder than giving up alcohol or giving up anything else that we've given up or let go of or just really put in check.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would say giving up alcohol for me was extremely difficult. I honestly didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, as bad as that sounds. But then having said that, sugar is tougher. And I think because you have to eat every day, right? And then we're going to get into this more too, but if you look at the back of packages, everything has sugar added to it. So without even realizing, even when you're not trying to, you're putting sugar in your body, and you just crave that. And I read somewhere that a sugar craving is worse than craving cocaine or other hard drugs, or it can be just as powerful,
if not more.
Yeah.
So saying that too, also know, once again, we're not judging anybody, but for us, realizing how the food affects our bodies and how the food that we put in our bodies affects also just our relationship with God, and kind of just where we're at on that journey has been really eye-opening for us. So take what we say, sit on it, think about it. And, obviously you have to make the own decisions in your own life on what you're going to do, but also know that this has been a long journey for both of us.
It's an ongoing journey, I would say too.
We're actively making changes daily. And so we haven't gotten it all figured out. We still have a lot of things that we're struggling with, but we're working through it, and we want to share some things that have worked for us.
Yeah. But I guess, and before we move on to the first topic, I would say at the end of the day, right, what you put in your mouth is a choice. Mm-hmm. And I never looked at it that way before. So you either can take control of that choice because you are making a choice, or you can bury your head in the sand like I did for the first 40 plus years of my life.
Well, I think too with society, our society, we don't look at food as an addiction or an issue. Like we've got this like body positivity thing going. So you can be really unhealthy and really overweight, and it's like it's okay now. And the reality is what's going on with your health inside behind that is not okay, and it's going to cause problems long term. And we've both experienced those problems. So
yes.
Keep in mind, just because our culture is saying, oh, it's fine, it's great, you're beautiful. I've always said, I've had so many people be like, that I'd say, oh, I wasn't happy with the way I looked. And they'd be like, oh, but you're so pretty. And I'm like, I never said I was ugly. I said I was overweight or I was fat. Like I gained too much weight. You can be beautiful at any size. That doesn't mean you're healthy. So just keep in mind, a lot of what we're talking about is the actual health behind not what you see in the mirror, but how you're actually feeling. That's the important thing.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say about that too is, at least for me, I would challenge people to think about, whenever I give in to food or sugar, or even when it was alcohol, I mean, once I was aware that what I was doing wasn't healthy and I needed to stop, when I would give into that, it doesn't just affect that one area of your life. It starts to affect all areas of your life. It started to affect my work and, wanting to be lazy and just stop doing the things that I knew I was supposed to do. So if I had given up on that one area of my life or given in, then it was easy just to give in on the next thing. And then before you know it, it snowballed, and I kind of wasted a day, if you will, from one weakness or one bad decision. In my opinion, just think about if this is how that can affect lots of areas of your life, not just the one area. So.
All right. So why don't you start with kind of like...
I want you to start first.
You want me to start?
Yes, because yours is more entertaining than mine.
It's more entertaining?
Yes.
So I was raised... I would say the way that I was raised with food was probably more typical now than it was 30 years ago. So, I mean, my parents were young. My mom gave me Coca-Cola in my bottle. Like, I don't ever remember being told to drink water as a kid. We always drank soda. I grew up eating Little Debbie chocolate brownies, the ones with the little pecans on the top. For breakfast, I had those in my lunch every day whenever my mom would send me with my lunch. And I usually had another one whenever I got home from school. So within the course of 2 days, I would go through a whole pack of those because I think they had 6 in a pack.
It's amazing you're still alive.
We had the Swiss cakes. My dad used to call me Tweety Bird whenever I was a little girl because I wouldn't eat like anything he would put in front of me when I was with him, except for chicken nuggets, French fries, and like a burger. And he just did not understand why I wouldn't eat anything. But those are the foods that I always ate. Like my mom kind of let me eat what I wanted. And we did have dinners at home sometimes. My stepdad would cook like good dinners and I would fight. I didn't want to eat vegetables. And I was forced to eat them occasionally, but I never grew a taste for that kind of stuff. So as I went into adolescence, I continued eating horribly. And then at lunch, my options were like cheese sticks and, like a barbecue sandwich. And I ate like crap.
Can I say something? But that's not just you. I mean, school lunches is a whole other thing. I mean,
whole different
and so
things.
There's just not really a lot of healthy options at school.
We had vending machines and we had a snack bar. So I was not getting a lot of nutritional value, but at the same time, I was super active. I was always in lots of sports. I was in dance. I would say that my eating habits didn't catch up with me until right around the time I graduated. And that year after I graduated high school and I was working, I was going to college, and this is kind of embarrassing, but I will say this. I used to buy a whole pack of the Velveeta shells and cheese and a whole pound of ground beef, and I would mix it together and I would eat the whole thing. But I wouldn't eat all day, and then I would eat that. Now I know that has like 5,000 calories in it, but I had never had to worry.
So you're saying you would eat it right before you went to bed?
Yeah, I wouldn't have
Okay.
time to eat all day. I was busy working, going to college, everything. And if I did eat, it was dollar menu stuff, and I would drink Coke all day, like regular Coca-Cola, like the sugar, high fructose corn syrup, all of that. So, and I will also add, my whole life I struggled with eczema. I struggled with autoimmune issues. I had really bad asthma, lots of inflammation, but it didn't catch up to me until my early 20s. So when Paul met me, it was kind of starting to catch up to me. And when we started dating, he was kind of like, "What are you doing? Like, you can't eat McDonald's twice a day." Like,
I would like to say, I think I did save your life.
I know you've
I
said
think
that many times.
you're welcome. Because yeah, when I met Savannah, she only ate fast food.
Well, and let me also add, I'm a volume eater. So, and that's something that I've really been working on this year. But whenever I say I ate fast food, it wasn't like a kid's meal. I would get like 2 quarter pounders plus a large fry and a large Coca-Cola. I don't know how much nutrition is in that, but it's not good for you. And I was lucky because even though I had gained a little bit of weight after high school, I never got like huge eating that way. So I've always said I didn't feel like I had a good metabolism, but now looking back, I'm like, no, I think I did. I just was eating so much.
Well, so much and just so much.
So much junk.
Yeah.
So much. So going into our relationship, getting ready for our wedding, and Paul introduced me to lots of other different kinds of food.
Which is really sad because it's not like I was eating super healthy either at the time, but compared to what you ate,
True.
it was very healthy. So
True. And then my dad, whenever I was living in California, I was living with him, and he's a great cook. And so he would cook nutritious meals, and I had access to that food all the time. He'd go to the grocery store, and, I was a college kid. I wasn't going to go buy food if I didn't have to. So I started eating more at home, the things that he would make. And then when we were getting ready for our wedding, I got a personal trainer. Like Paul had a trainer at the same time. Like we were both actively trying to, look good and feel good. And then after we got married and we moved here, it all went downhill. As soon as I fit into my dress and I felt like I looked good, we got married. And then it just like, I went back to.
well, I mean, I'll say we were broke as a joke and life is stressful. And
Yeah.
so
ramen noodles.
We went back to cheap food and we would go out to eat Mexican food and have margaritas because at the time that was relatively affordable.
Yeah.
And we would do that 2 or 3 nights a week. And we all know how that goes.
So our eating as a whole together wasn't great. But anyway, so we did that for a few years. And then I was going to be in my cousin's wedding and I did not want to be the fat bridesmaid. I'm not going to lie. That was what motivated me. So I decided to like go on a super strict diet. I think I only ate like maybe 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day for probably 7 months. And I lost 70 pounds. And I really got into running. I got into CrossFit. And so then even I gained a lot of weight whenever I had Brooks, but I was so healthy during my pregnancy with Brooks. That's probably the healthiest I've ever been in my life. I was still working out. I was eating really good. I was very, very like close to paleo all the time. And then after I had Brooks, I lost all my baby weight that year really fast because I was still working out. And I think a lot of that was actually stress. And I thought I was just doing good. But I went back to eating like nothing all day and then eating a whole bunch at night because I didn't have time to eat during the day. So then fast forward, I maintained being relatively healthy. And then I got pregnant with Wyatt. That was just a whole mess of a year because I was so sick that year. And then everything after that kind of like evolved. But why don't you tell us about your history with food? Because now we know mine is a mess.
Okay. So like a lot of things in our relationship, my relationship with food was completely opposite of yours in almost every way. But I grew up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, a homemaker, and she cooked 3 meals a day. So I don't remember very often waking up and eating cereal for breakfast because my mom had a hot cooked meal for breakfast for me every morning, which is kind of insane to think about. Like
spoiled.
My entire childhood to the point I went to college. And I don't know that it was necessarily the healthiest stuff, but it was home cooked. So, I mean, it's got to be pretty healthy. And I guess maybe it was a blessing looking back that we live 30 minutes down a gravel road from McDonald's or any other fast food. So fast food was really not much of an option for us. And so I guess that was really a blessing. And then my grandparents lived right across the road. So if I go over there, I mean, my grandma was cooking food from scratch as well too. It was just, she was a homemaker from the, from the heartland of America in the Great Depression. They just made everything from scratch. So that's how I grew up. And of course I was incredibly active. So, I probably had 2% body fat growing up. And, obviously I didn't take responsibility for that when I left home to continue those things that I had seen growing up, unfortunately. And we were talking about this earlier today, and I struggle with eczema as well as Savannah, but not as bad. But the eczema popped up my freshman year of college, and thinking back now that we know that a lot of that comes from food. Well, that was the first time in my life that I wasn't getting home cooked meals multiple times a day, and I was getting to make my own choices, which meant fast food and picking out what I wanted from the cafeteria, which was probably not the healthy options. So that's when I started to see my first negative health effects. But as far as like gaining weight, I was super active, played golf in college, worked out constantly, and I could eat pretty much anything I wanted and not gain any weight. And then when I became a teacher and a coach, I walked probably 10 miles a day. So I didn't gain much weight there, even though I started drinking more and more beer and things like that. But then, when I started doing real estate full time, now I'm in my truck or in my office all day, every day. And if I'm not careful, then I have a problem. So developed some pretty bad habits and some kind of serious health issues over the last 2-3 years. So that's kind of my journey with food.
Well, and being a teacher and a coach, you were saying you walked like 10 miles a day, and then you were in your truck all day, like not walking hardly at all. So
the change from the careers?
Yeah, that was a big change for you.
Yeah, so I think it snuck up on me because, I definitely wasn't eating super healthy when I was coaching. But again, I was walking 10 miles a day and then working on weekends doing the same thing. So, you can get away with it. But so, yeah, that's when it snuck up on me. So moving on. So we've kind of talked about our relationship with food. I think we both kind of had an aha moment or a wake up moment, or maybe God kind of smacked us in the face about our health and the changes that we need to make. So why don't you go ahead and kind of explain what was that moment for you where you said, something's got to change?
So, coming out of my pregnancy with Wyatt, and that year was just so hard on my health. I was on 17 rounds of antibiotics and 19 rounds of steroids in the course of like 9 months. And during that time, I prayed, asked God, like, hey, whatever I have to do, if you can just get me and my baby out of this, I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll change. I'll be a better person, all that stuff. You know how I think a lot of people in that kind of situation, when you think you're going to die, you get there. And so I started feeling a little bit better, got back to work, life was going on. And all of a sudden, January of 2020, was that January of 20? No, that was
2019.
January of 2019, my eczema flared up so bad on my entire body. I think at one point I was like trying to get a percentage, and about 75% of my entire body was flared up with the eczema. And what a lot of people don't know is eczema, it starts off as dry skin and then it starts to weep and it can turn into like a staph infection. So I basically had the equivalent of a staph infection on 75% of my body. I missed 6 weeks of work. I couldn't sleep at night. I was so miserable. Taking a shower hurt my skin. It was like the lowest of the low of my life. And I remember like at one point thinking like, I can't even hold or kiss Wyatt. Like he was like 8 months old at the time or whatever. Like I couldn't do anything with him. Like my skin just hurt so bad. My eyes hurt. My face was swollen. I didn't even look like myself. And I still have a picture of that I should probably post and remind people, like, when you're in that place, like there is hope, but I felt hopeless. And I remember thinking everyone would just be better if I died. Like there's no reason to go on if this is going to be my life. And I remember praying and being like, God, if this is going to be the rest of my life, I just want to be dead. I don't want to be here anymore. And that was like, I had never felt that way. I had never felt like dying would be better than being alive. And so I posted something on Facebook and I posted pictures of my skin and what was going on. And I had a lot of clients reaching out to me because I'd missed so much work. Everyone was confused. I had the salon going. Paul, poor Paul, he was trying to hold down the fort with an infant, a 5-year-old, the salon. He was still teaching. He was doing real estate. It was so hard on him because I was basically bedridden at that point. I had been to 9 different dermatologists. All they would give me was steroids. Nobody could seem to help me. I was going through topical steroid withdrawal. And so I went to the internet and I started researching. I posted on Facebook and I had a girl that I had met through Unique that I was doing that messaged me. And she's like, hey, I'm going to add you to this group about this medicine. So went down the rabbit hole, started to realize it wasn't just getting on a medicine. It was also my food, and all of these different foods could cause eczema, like eggs and gluten and dairy. And so I deep dove into, I got to learn how to cook, because up until this point, I did not cook. Paul did all the cooking if we ate at home. I was self-proclaimed never going to be a cook. I didn't want to learn. I had no interest in learning. I hated the idea of it. All the men in my life had always cooked. My mom didn't cook. My stepdad and my dad both cooked. So for me, I was fine with Paul being my personal chef. But he wasn't going to take the time to remove everything from everything that I needed removed. So I went full force, no dairy, no gluten, no eggs, no soda, nothing. And I started to see results pretty fast. Mm-hmm. And within like 6 months, I looked like a completely different person. My skin was better. There's those pictures that I have of that time. You look in my eyes and I look so just miserable. It's like I look so sad because I was so miserable.
Well, I wouldn't say you just looked better. Like you basically were.
I was better.
What you were like cured. I mean.
Well, and I did do the Aaron regimen, which if you're going through eczema, highly recommend looking into the Aaron regimen, which helped me get through the topical steroid withdrawal. And now I keep my compound on hand, but I don't hardly ever have to use it, ever.
So you're saying because of what you've changed putting in your body, has basically cured most of your issues.
Yeah, the only time I have a little bit of an eczema flare-up is when I eat crap.
It's self-inflicted.
And not only that, now when I have gluten within 10 or 15 minutes, I'm like, oh, my stomach hurts. I get bloated. I feel
Can I just say that I typically say, are you sure you want to eat that? Because your stomach's going to hurt and I don't want to hear it.
I used to really resent that. Now I listen a little bit more, but sometimes you just want a bite. Sometimes. Okay. Anyways, so my health journey, like overall, like really changing my health, mine has been up and down for years, but that moment in 2019 was just like my wake up moment with God. And I had started praying about it all the time, and I really listened, and I feel like he's like, okay, here's your answer. Here's what you're going to do. And the thing for me was I had eczema all over my body many times, but whenever it was on my face, and my face was so bad that I couldn't put makeup on to cover it up anymore, I feel like that was God really trying to wake me up and say, now I've taken everything from you. Are you going to listen? Are you going to wake up? Are you going to do what you need to do? And I'm very grateful for that, because I think feeling so ugly at that moment was the only way I was going to wake up, and the only way that I could get to the point now to have the trust and the faith that I do. Mm-hmm. So I know that probably sounds kind of weird, but everyone has to be pushed to different points to get there, I think. And that was my breaking point. So, so my major health journey started in 2019, and then it's been ongoing since then. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, I think ongoing is the thing. It never stops, right?
It's something I've struggled with. Like I've gone back and forth. I get really, really good and I'm doing so great. And then I kind of fall off the wagon because I get busy doing other things. And then I have to get like steered back.
But I think my point is like, even when you get it dialed in where you need it, it's still going to be a journey, because
absolutely
it can't be a diet. It's got to be a lifestyle.
Yes,
and a diet. Well, I know, but a diet is like a curse word to me. I think a diet, you don't want to think about going on a diet, because diets don't work.
Well, but everyone is on a diet. A diet is basically just whatever you are consuming and eating and choosing to put in your body. So I've had to like change my mindset of, we all have a diet. But the word diet, what it actually means and what people use it as is, oh, I'm trying to like change things. Well, we should always be trying to change and do better. So I've had to like shift my mindset on that word. So my diet now is ever changing and ever evolving, but I'm always on a diet just like everybody else.
I agree.
So what was your wake up moment as far as food and stuff?
So my wake up moment is going to be kind of what we talked about. I switched from, being a coach and getting tons of exercise and not eating very healthy to, being full-time real estate and then getting my broker's license and opening the office. So I literally sit all day, either in my truck or at a conference table or at my desk. And my bad eating habits started to catch up to me. You don't really realize it at first, but your pants start not fitting, and then we've all experienced that, right? And then it gets worse and worse, and then I started drinking more and more, and then I found out whenever I drink, I like to eat as well too. I like to snack, and so in the evenings I was drinking way too much alcohol and snacking, and then I think it was around Christmas of 2020, and I got to be the heaviest I've ever been. I think I was 212 pounds, and I'm probably healthy at around 180, 185, something like that. But it wasn't just that. I think we went to the doctor or something, and I had high blood pressure.
That was 2021.
Okay, so somewhere in there,
Yeah.
early 2021, yeah. I think we got a scale for Christmas. We got the Renfro scale. It gives you all the feedback on your body fat and your
Tells you
BMI,
everything.
and basically it gives you a red, yellow, or green on all your numbers. You have like 12 or 14 numbers, and most of them are red. So I was like, well, that's not good. And then we went to the doctor, and I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all the things that say that if you keep going on this path, you're going to have a heart attack. So that was kind of my wake up call. Well, that was one of my wake up calls. So I started fasting and did hardcore fasting because I figured out that I have a serious problem with self control. But if I could fast until 6 or 7 o'clock at night, then that is a pretty big win to fast that long. But then, then I probably felt justified in eating and drinking what I wanted in my 2-hour window or whatever I had. So I did lose weight. But I think I also lost a lot of muscle. My numbers did get better, but they didn't get to where they needed to be. I got down to 187 pounds, I think. So it was, again, some good things happened, but then fasting just gets old after a while. And I can't remember what happened, but I fell off the wagon and gained pretty much all the weight back. So January of this year, 2023, was when I did the typical New Year's resolution. I'm going to work out this year. I'm going to get in shape. And so another turning point would be I went down to the pull-up bar, and I think I could do maybe one. I could do maybe one pull-up. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I can't even do one pull-up. I'm overweight. My blood pressure is back up. And so I started working out, not every single day of the week, but consistently 3 days a week. And now I'm almost 10 months in, and I've actually learned I don't enjoy working out, but I enjoy how you feel after you work out. So I'm mature enough to at least get to that part. But then a couple of months ago, like you start to see results when you're working out, right? But then at some point, if the diet doesn't catch up with the working out, you're going to not see any more results. So I feel like I plateaued, and I came to the realization that the diet was going to have to catch up. And honestly, and I've started doing a pretty consistent quiet time in the morning and reading and talking to God. And I felt like for at least 3 or 4 months, God was kind of saying like, stop putting it off. Like, what you're doing is you need to change your diet. And for me, it's sugar. Like, I'm addicted to sugar. And so, this month, my habit for September was cutting out sugar.
How do you feel like you've done on that?
Well, so that was also my goal in June and August, and I failed miserably both of those times. I think I had a different one in July, but
because you gave up on the sugar, you're like, I'm not doing that.
And so September, I just felt like God was saying, no, like you can't put this off. Like, you have to take it head on. And so this month I've probably cut out 95% of the sugar.
So would you just say you felt convicted or you felt like it was just constantly in your head? Like, how do you feel like God communicated that to you?
No, I mean, I felt convicted, and it's I think it's similar to the alcohol. Is like whenever I'm like, okay, I need to cut out the sugar. This health expert that we follow, Barbara O'Neill, she calls sugar the white poison, and she goes in depth about how like sugar only does bad things to you. It only causes inflammation. It causes all these health problems. It has a ripple effect through your entire body when you overconsume sugar. And so I just felt like, yeah, God was telling me to cut it out, and it was just harder than I ever possibly could have imagined. So, I will say on the flip side of that, now it's been, we're at the end of the month. So I've made it
8th or 29th.
So I've almost made it about 4 weeks. And again, I'm still having a little bit of, coffee creamer, that has a little bit of sugar in it in the morning, first thing. And if I can't take it, we have the raw honey that we get from a farmer now. And I'll have a teaspoon of that or tablespoon of that. Which honey's supposed to be good for you, right? Mm-hmm. So I do those things, and so I've probably cut out 95%. I haven't had any cookies, candy, cake, dessert,
which is
soda.
hard, especially we do our like Bible study on Mondays, and when our church friends come over, like we always have dessert and food,
cheesecake,
and just
chocolate brownies, and I normally would have had 2 or 3 of everything.
And I am so proud of you for not doing that.
And I will say, like I said, maybe this is like a selfish thing or vanity, but like, I wanted to see some more results from my working out. And I've lost another, 5 or 6 pounds this month.
Yeah.
Just from not consuming sugar.
How many belt loops have you lost though? Because that was crazy. That was like super fast. All of a sudden, he's like, my belt doesn't fit. My pants don't fit.
Yeah, so that probably has been the crazy, because I have been working out, so muscle weighs more than fat, right? So I've been gaining muscle, so maybe the weight loss isn't the biggest thing, but I've lost 5 or 6 pounds, but then I lost 2 more notches on my belt.
Just this month, just
from cutting out sugar. So my waist has gone from, feeling a little tight at 34 to like now my 32 pants are almost too big.
I keep trying to tell him to get new pants. He's like, no, they're fine. Like, you need new pants.
But I mean, what does that tell you though? You cut out sugar and your waistline instantly shrinks 2 inches.
Well, you had lost what, like 15 to 20 pounds before this month?
I probably lost about 15 pounds. Yeah.
Okay. And that's him he's gained a lot of muscle this year too. So there's that. But just this month, like, even though he's lost all that weight all year and everything, just this month, it was like within 2 weeks, he was like, what is going on? Because his waist just kept shrinking, and it still is. And so,
and all it is just cutting out. It's just cutting out sugar.
Yeah. And he still has fruit.
Oh yeah. And, I'll have some fruit.
Like natural. He's talking about like extra white sugar, like, or snacks with sugar.
Yes.
We've also been cutting out, what is it? Like soybean oil and things like that.
Well, we're going to get into that more later, but yeah, trying to cut out all the oils too. But, so a combination. So I eat a pretty big lunch, but I try to keep it pretty healthy. And then I eat a small dinner, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So I am getting the fasting in as well too. So if I go from like 7 p.m. till 7 p.m. at night till 12 p.m. the next day, that's a 17-hour fast. And supposedly 17 hours is supposed to be kind of the magic number for getting all the benefits of fasting as well too.
So for me, like my relationship with food has been a little bit different this year. So last year, doing my year of no alcohol, and I've mentioned this before, I basically replaced alcohol with dessert. And so I went from 2 years ago losing over 30 pounds and a ton of inches and getting like my skinny again, to last year gaining all of that weight back by eating dessert late at night and like filling that void of not having my other vice, which was a glass of wine or whatever. I just switched it to food, and I didn't even realize I was doing that at the time, but I did. So fast forward at the beginning of this year, and I was just kind of mad. I was so disappointed in myself, and I was so mad. I came out of that year of not drinking alcohol, and I felt so good about that, but I felt so bad about the state of my body because of the dessert. And then trying to create a different habit and not eat dessert and not eat junk food late at night. That's probably the hardest thing I think I've ever really had to do as far as habits and my health journey.
Me too.
Because even whenever I would eat way less calories and lose weight, or no matter what I was doing, I always let myself have a little bit of dessert or a little bit of this. But I had never in my life gotten to the point where I was eating it every day. And I would be really good all day and then be like, I'd eat dinner and then be like, ooh, I want something sweet before I go to bed. And so then I would be eating. And I was contributing to your problem because I was like, ooh, I'm going to make cookies and I'm going to learn to make a pie and I'm going to do this. And then my kids, I noticed the boys got to where they were expecting dessert every single night. And I was like, what have I done? Not only have I failed myself, I failed my husband and my children. So at the beginning of the year, I read a book called Start Again Monday, and it's a Christian author, and she really talks about her struggle with food and her struggle with weight. And it really gave me some time to self-reflect and think about how I had let food control so many aspects of my life and how I obsessed about food. I've always obsessed about what I was going to eat, what I could and couldn't eat. Like, I've never just had a healthy relationship with food at all. And I don't think that that's what God wants for us at all. I don't think he wants us to be constantly struggling about, oh, I got to lose this 15 pounds, or I've got to, oh, I can't eat that, or I can't eat this. So I've really tried to change my mindset this year on food, but I also had an epiphany during that time. I'm a volume eater. And what I mean by that is I can absolutely deprive myself and not eat all day long. But once I start eating, I eat big and I eat a lot all at once. And then I feel miserable. And so I got to a point where I'm like, I don't want to feel that way. How can I make sure I don't feel that way? So this year, as Paul has been on his health journey, mine has been a little bit different because I never really wanted to eat breakfast. My entire life, I've never been a big breakfast person, but I started really thinking about the times that I was the healthiest in my life. I am the healthiest when I eat small meals all day. I can fast with the best of them. I can do the OMAD, like the one meal a day. And I have done that in the past and lost weight doing that, but it's not a consistent thing that I can do forever. And so the moment I stop doing it, I gain weight because I get in a habit of eating high volume when I eat, and I have a hard time controlling that. So now this year, as I've been focusing on small portions, and then focusing on what nutritional value my food has, so now I meal prep the breakfast tacos with the cheese and the sausage and stuff. And so just taking the time to do that. But in all of that, I pray about it almost every day. Like, I do my quiet time in the morning and I always ask God to help me have self-discipline, help me deny my flesh and only give my body the foods that it needs versus the things that I want. And in doing that, I've found strength in having more self-control, because self-control is one of the hardest things for me when it comes to food. And I've decided that depravity for me doesn't work. I can't just completely say, I'm not going to eat this ever again. I have to just control my portions when I choose to have dessert. So like whenever I had a little piece of cheesecake the other night, but I ate it slower and I was very careful to be like, this is all I'm getting. I'm not going back for seconds. I'm not going to have any more. And enjoy it while I have it, but not go too far. Now my eczema flared up a little bit after that, so I shouldn't have done it at all. So also paying attention to just how my body feels. And I feel like God is still revealing those things to me and helping me through this process. But in doing that, I have also lost about 20 pounds this year doing that alone.
So my question for you is going to be, what do you think God has revealed to you over the last year or however long about food and like your relationship with food and your relationship with him?
Oh, I used food just like I used to use alcohol to numb and to try to fill in. Like, it was something that I enjoyed food in a very unhealthy way. I mean, and it would make me feel like garbage afterwards. And it was like self-sabotage, right? So now, whenever I'm having one of those moments late at night where I'm like, I just want to go get ice cream, or I want to go, I just want to go do something that I shouldn't do or eat something that I shouldn't eat. I'm like, okay, God, I'm being tempted right now. I need to say no to this, right? And I pray about it. And if I really, really, really just need something to like cut that off, like to just, get my mind in a different place and to do, I will have like one dark chocolate. Or I'll do like the spoonful of honey like you do. We have some really good honey we buy now. But I also have learned, I used to wait until the end of the day to have the sugar if I wanted some sugar. Now, if I'm craving a piece of chocolate or something in the middle of the day, I think about it and I sit on it for a little while and make a decision instead of just like impulse eating. And so I'll be like, okay, is it worth it? Am I just feeling low? Like I try to check in with how I'm feeling versus just eating no matter what, right? And if I'm feeling any kind of way, kind of the same thing I did with alcohol. Like if I'm feeling any kind of way, like sad or depressed or mad or angry, I don't eat. I try to like spend some time in prayer, read my Bible, do things like that first. And I feel like that helps me keep food from being an idol, keeping it in its proper place of nutrition and trying to think of it more as giving me fuel to live my day versus enjoyment, right? Like the whole idea of eating to live, not living to eat.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
It was a long answer, but yeah.
That's okay.
What do you think God has revealed to you about food?
Gosh, a few things, I think. I guess as I've gotten further along in my walk with God, I mean, to live your life in the way that God wants you to, you have to be self-disciplined, right? It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, sexual temptation or food or, the way you treat people or you can't just say the things that you want to say, because very ungodly things go through our heads every day when we're driving on the road or whatever it is, right? So, to live our life in the way God wants us to, we have to be self-disciplined. And I feel like I had done a better and better job about that. But again, food is something that you do every single day, right? You have to eat or you're going to die. And I had just avoided any kind of self-discipline in that area. And kind of like I said before, self-discipline, when it breaks down, it doesn't just affect one area of your life. It can affect several different areas of your life, and it can cause a spiral or, momentum going in the wrong direction, and you have to try to stop it to get back to where you were. So I just think that, the biggest thing for me is God wants us to be self-disciplined, and you can't just, I feel like in our society, we just don't talk about food, as far as like our Christian walk and being disciplined in that area as well. But yeah, I mean, I think kind of similar to you, as we cut out alcohol, I leaned heavily on sugar to kind of fill that void. But again, anything that you put in you to fill that void when the void's really God isn't going to satisfy you. And, so I think that's kind of what's been revealed to me over the last, 3 or 4 months is I've really for the first time in my life dug in and struggled with the food issue and started to really think about what I was putting in my body and the effect that it had on me, and not just my body, but also my mental state and you and the kids and everything else. So, but that kind of leads me to the next thing that we're going to talk about is this struggle, over the last 3 or 4 months of eating healthy. I definitely buried my head in the sand for the first 42 years of my life. And, of course we all know this, right? But in the last few weeks, I've actually started looking at the back of food packages. And, once you start to look at that, you can't unsee what you've seen, right? And it's shocking, and it's sad, and it also starts to make you angry when you realize all the things that our government allows the food companies to put in our food. And then you start to so I would challenge you with this. If there's something on the back of a food package, first of all, just take a back of a food package and look at it. It can be bread. It could be, any of the snack foods that you get for yourself or your kids. And if you look at the ingredients and there's things that you can't pronounce or you don't know what they are, just do a quick Google search and then Google side effects after the word, and you'll get this laundry list of horrible side effects that are in a lot of the food, or I would say at this point, most of the food that you can buy at the grocery store.
What was shocking to me was, as I was on this journey, how your feeds kind of cultivate to what you're researching and, what you're Googling. So as I was looking up ingredients and doing stuff like that, I started getting all these reels and these TikToks and stuff of people that came from they were originally from America and they went to Europe or went to another country, moved to another country. And they're like, I lost like 30 pounds overnight eating more foods that should have been bad for me. And I felt better. And I come back to America to visit family and I feel like garbage. And it really made me be more aware, like, okay, why is that, you know? And I've known that there were a lot of ingredients that we probably shouldn't be eating for a long time, but I kind of ignored it because I'm like, oh, it's just so hard. So having Paul on this journey with me now for the first time, where we're both paying attention to it, he's reading and learning the same things. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't know what to do about that. Like, are we just going to take everything out of our house? Are we going to go buy a bunch of property and grow our own food? Because that's kind of, you start to get that hopeless feeling.
Getting to that point, yes.
Yeah, you get to that feeling where you're like, there's no hope. So a couple of things that I've really noticed recently, and I think I just told you, eggs used to flare up my eczema so bad. My stomach used to hurt so bad when I had eggs. So the majority of my life, I just steered clear of eggs, okay? Because I knew eggs were going to make me feel bloated and horrible. My cousin has her own chickens and she feeds those chickens really good and she takes care of her chickens. And we started getting farm fresh eggs from her. Y'all, our family goes through about 2 dozen eggs a week. I can eat eggs all day now and have no issues. And the eggs do not bother my skin. They don't upset my stomach. And I'm like, okay, what are they giving to those chickens that are causing those eggs to be unhealthy? You know, because the farm fresh eggs that I'm getting from her don't bother me. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge like, whoa moment for me. The other thing is like when you're looking at the back of packages and you see all these food dyes. So at the beginning of the summer, I told Paul, I just wanted to see, because I'd been reading all this stuff about food dyes and kids, and I wanted to see like what it would be like if I just took them out of the kids' diet. I didn't tell the kids. I was just like, hey, oh yeah, I haven't been to the store to get that snack or this snack or whatever. And we both noticed within a week of no food dyes, no excessive food dyes, their behavior had changed, especially Wyatt. His behavior had changed significantly.
And I think we were also... I think by cutting out the dyes, we were cutting out not all the sugar, but a lot of the sugar was getting cut out. We were cutting out a lot of sugar. Yeah, we were cutting out a lot of the sugar and we were cutting a lot of the processed oils and things. And so after that, I was like, okay, we're not getting that stuff again. We're not going back. And then it was really funny. The kids went to visit my dad in California this summer and Wyatt had an epic meltdown like 3 or 4 days in. You did warn your dad not to give them sugar.
My warning was, look, I sent him a list of foods that they eat and foods that they never have. And I was like, look, they're going to be with you for 2 weeks. You're the grandparent. If you want to risk it, okay, but these are going to be the consequences if you give these kids these foods or too much of them, you know? But I still wanted them to have a good time and everything with my dad. So about 4 days in, Wyatt is just crying hysterically, and Brooks gets on FaceTime and he's like, it's Papa's fault. He gave him root beer and ice cream and all this stuff. And then Wyatt's like, it's all your fault, Papa. I feel horrible. It's your fault because I'm having a sugar crash. And it was so funny, but I realized that us getting healthier and us trying to change our kids' diets and set them up for success in the future has inadvertently been teaching them to think about how they feel and see how the foods are affecting how they feel and what's going on with them inside. And that's so valuable. I don't even know if you could put a price on the value of that lesson for our kids. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
No, absolutely. And
go ahead.
No, I was just speaking of the kids. I'm going to take a step back. One of my favorite documentaries that I watched more than once, and it's an old one, but if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly encourage you to watch the documentary Super Size Me. And it's where the guy eats nothing but McDonald's for 30 days for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And his rule is if they ask him if he wants to supersize it, he has to say yes. Mm-hmm. And so he gets all his blood work done, of course, before he starts. And then it just tracks him. And at the end of the 30 days, his doctor basically says, you're dying. If you don't stop, you're going to die. He gains 32 pounds in 30 days. Mm-hmm. High blood pressure. His heart rate went from a resting heart rate of like 55 to like 80. I mean, just all these horrible things that the food did to him. But in part of that documentary, he was looking at school lunches, and you see all the kids having cheese sticks and pizza and just all this horrible fried sugar food. And then he goes to an alternative school. So these are the kids that got sent, they did something wrong and they got sent to the alternative school, long-term or whatever you want to call that. Right. And it was in Iowa or something, but at the alternative school, They had made some kind of deal where they were doing only naturally sourced foods. So like lean meats, vegetables. They were baking their own bread. There was absolutely no sugar. All the kids had to drink water. There was no processed foods, no sugar, nothing like that. And they were having zero behavior problems at the school because when the kids were there, they were just getting nothing but healthy and nutritious food. And just the fact that it changed the behavior so much for the troubled kids just by changing their diet, it was just shocking.
I see such a significant change and difference in our kids when they have less sugar than when because we don't deprive them. Like they go to a birthday party and they want some cake. I'm not going to say no. It's like, okay, have some cake. I don't think that saying you can never, ever, ever have these things is going to work, because then they're going to turn 18, get out of the house, and all hell's going to break loose.
I mean,
right?
I think
they're going to do whatever they want.
I think it's the 80-20 rule, right? I mean, we don't keep it in the house. If you're out and you have a birthday party, then you can have some. But 80% of the time, you're doing what you should be doing. At the end of the day, over years and years, you're going to end up in a pretty good place.
Yeah. But it's just been us making changes. You know, Wyatt, he came up to me the other day. I got these they're like gummy sticks. It's kind of like a fruit roll up, but it's not rolled up and long. And I was at Sam's and I saw them and I wanted to look at the back. There's only like 4 ingredients, right? They don't have a lot of sugar in them. They don't have any artificial flavors. So I have been trying to find alternatives. So they still get some stuff that feels like snacks for kids, you know?
Well, I think the thing is you can buy some packaged stuff like those fruit rolls things that you found. I mean, I looked at the back of the package. There's nothing artificial in them.
No, there's nothing artificial in them. And they have I think it's 4 or 5 ingredients. And yes, one of the ingredients is sugar. So they do have sugar in them.
But the fruit, they're made from fruit. So fruit has sugar. So there was only like 1 gram of added sugar. So almost no added sugar.
And so Wyatt comes up to me, he's like, is this healthy? And I was like, well, buddy, it's not necessarily healthy, but it's not as bad as some other choices. So it's okay for you to have one of those, and I'll get them for you if you like. And he's like, well, I really like them, and they don't make my tummy hurt. And I was like, well, what have you eaten that makes your tummy hurt? And he goes, well, you used to buy those Fig Newton packets, and those made my tummy hurt. And I stopped doing the Fig Newton packets because they had like 14 grams of added sugar. And I didn't even realize that. You think Fig Newtons are not that bad, right? They are. So I stopped doing those. And he's just like, yeah, if I ate one, I was okay. But when I ate both of them, it would hurt my tummy. And so teaching your kids to think about how the food affects them and how it makes them feel. And instead of saying this is a bad food, it's like, well, that's just not a good source of fuel. Like what kind of, Paul always asks them or tells them you need to put some gas in your gas tank. Like you got to fuel your body. And I think that those kinds of relationship, and the way that they think about food is so important, because I always looked at food as good or bad. Mm-hmm. And, either I had to deprive myself and be miserable, or I could eat what I wanted and deal with the consequences. So having a different relationship with food and teaching our kids to have a different relationship. Like Brooks keeps asking me how much protein is in this? and it's so funny because he's so focused on getting enough protein now because he wants to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And
I would say a couple of things. Those fruit things that you're talking about. So I did try one the other day.
Yeah.
And they taste just as good as a fruit roll up.
Oh yeah.
From what I remember, yeah. I mean, they tasted great, even though they don't have that much sugar and it's all made from fruit. So there are healthy alternatives that your kids will accept, or that you can accept for yourself. You just have to look a little harder. And the other thing that was shocking to me, I'll have to send you this reel later. But this guy was talking about ketchup. And so it
has so much sugar.
He got the healthy bottle of ketchup out and it says 4 grams of sugar. So you're like, oh, that's not that bad, but it's 4 grams of sugar in a tablespoon.
Oh,
4 grams of sugar in 1 tablespoon. And that's the
healthy option.
And then I can't remember how many tablespoons. You do the math. It ends up being that about 1/3 of the big bottle of ketchup is sugar.
Are we getting rid of sugar? I mean, are we getting rid of ketchup now?
I'm not saying we are or we aren't, but I couldn't believe it. But you think about it, 4 grams of sugar doesn't sound that bad, but then you realize the serving size is only a tablespoon. How many tablespoons are in that big bottle of ketchup?
Yeah,
do the math.
I feel like the containers of our food and what they say, we're set up we're failing. They are setting us up for failure because you look at it and it's like, oh, it's not that bad. Okay, that's fine. Or you look at like the total grams of sugar and then you look at the added sugar. And sometimes the total grams of sugar originally is like 1, and then they add 15 grams of sugar, like those Z bars. Remember, I used to get the kids those Z bars? 4
Yes.
kids. They're targeted for kids. I think they have 17 grams of added sugar per bar. That's insane. It's like they want us to be
Addicted.
fat, sick, and addicted
They
to
want us
sugar.
to be addicted. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's got to be purposeful, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're addicted, you're going to buy more, right? Isn't that what it's all about?
It makes me so angry. And then
Yeah.
the seed oils and how they're all carcinogenic and they make us so sick and they're so bad for your body. And
And they're in everything.
they're in everything. Yeah. I was just telling Paul the other day, I'm like, I got to get rid of the peanut butter crackers because the peanut butter crackers have every seed oil in them.
But it's not just the peanut butter crackers. We buy the healthy, quote unquote, natural peanut butter, and it only has 4 ingredients. It has peanuts, salt, I think water, but then the 4th one is
Soybean oil.
it's palm oil.
Oh, palm oil.
And so if you Google palm oil, it's like it just pops up and it says, and basically too much is just horrible for you and it causes
Yeah, we eat a ton of peanut
high
butter.
cholesterol, but palm oil is in everything, or soybean oil is in everything.
Yeah. So we're on this path. We're trying to change our kids' diets. We've seen a significant change in just the things that we've changed already. But the further along we get, the more we're getting to the point where we're like, okay, so basically meat, fruit, and vegetables. And even now you have to worry about the meat because they're doing bioengineered stuff.
Yeah. Well, I would say this too. So meat, fruit, vegetables, but also nuts are great for you.
But remember when you were buying the nuts?
Yeah,
the
no,
other day?
that's another great story. So I was looking for I was looking for nuts, right? So I went down the nut aisle. I was going to buy some almonds and stuff because a whole nother story is, when you're trying to lose weight, we hear like, oh, you need low fat, this, low fat, that. Well, you actually want to eat high fat as long as it's the right kind of fat. It's healthy fat, because then you're training your body to run on fat. So then guess what? When you're fasting, guess what your body is eating? It's eating the fat, which I think is why I've lost my waistline has shrunk so much. Besides cutting out the sugar, I've increased my fat intake quite a bit. But looking at nuts, like I looked at every package of nuts on the aisle at HEB, and we found 2 that had just almonds and sea salt, or peanuts and sea salt. Every other one of them had canola oil, soybean oil, palm oil.
And you did that with Brooks, so he got to experience and see
Yeah,
that.
so I was like, hey, Brooks, look at the back of the package. When we find one that just says almonds and sea salt, we're going to buy it. And we could not find one that had almonds and sea salt. They had the raw almonds that just had almonds, but if you had any kind of salt or any other kind of flavoring on it, then it had the canola oil, soybean oil added to it. And so you just can't avoid it.
You ended up getting those almonds and cashews.
So I found one brand that has a package of almonds and cashews together that just had almonds, cashews, and sea salt and nothing else.
Yeah.
But again, there was probably 50 options of nuts and only 2 packages.
And so whenever you're starting to look at that, it makes you think, is it on purpose? Are they making us sick on purpose? Because it's really, the more I learn, the more I know, the more I'm starting to feel like they're trying to make us sick on purpose.
That could be a whole nother episode.
It could be a whole nother episode, but just think about that. Maybe it's the conspiracy theorist in me, but I feel like they're doing it intentionally. And I feel like they're trying to get the kids hooked on sugar intentionally.
How can you say that? I mean, pharma, Pfizer, they made the vaccine just for, they said they weren't going to do it for a profit, right? They just did it for the goodness of humanity.
Whenever I went, that's what they said, right? And we funded it, right? We funded the vaccine, but they got all the profits.
They made $3 billion in profits after tax.
Anyways,
paid for the vaccine.
We probably shouldn't go there. Anyways, but I will say this, talking about pharmaceuticals, whenever I went to the 9 different dermatologists with my eczema back in 2019, there was a shot that I could get that was $2,300 a month. It would take me 6 months to notice if it was having any impact. And the most impact it could possibly have was maybe relieve my symptoms by about 50%. And every single dermatologist pushed that on me. And I was like, no, because it was a immune suppressant. So then I was going to be more open to getting other illnesses and being sick. And I'm like, why would I ever take that? And so many people get that shot. It's a huge moneymaker for the pharmaceutical industry. Anyways, just that's a little side note to just say it's connected. I swear it has to be.
Okay. Maybe that's our next episode then.
Maybe. So what are the biggest results that you've seen?
So I think the biggest results that I've seen so far, again, since cutting out sugar and adding fat, I mean, the one I'm most excited about is my waistline just shrinking significantly. But, I've talked about before how I went through 2 or 3 years there of like severe insomnia where I couldn't sleep, and cutting out the alcohol and all that definitely helped. But, and I still have nights where I struggle to sleep, but I just overall, I feel so much better. I'm able to work out more. I played in a golf tournament this summer where we played 36. It was 105. We played in 36 one day, 36 holes one day, and then 18 the next day. And I felt fine after those 2 days.
And you were playing with people that were like 15 to 20 years younger than you.
Yeah. And I was running laps around them. It felt amazing. I didn't know. It's one of those things you don't realize until it's after it's over, but it's like, I did completely fine in that, and I played really well, but it has to be a lot of this, what we're talking about. Right. Mm-hmm. And I refrained from alcohol while I was there, and they had all kinds of unhealthy food there for us. And I was very picky with what I ate while I was there. And the guys I was with thought I was crazy because I was skipping breakfast and kept my fasting going, but
you felt good.
I felt great. Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest thing has just been kind of like recognizing how I feel and thinking about whenever I am having a craving for sugar or for junk or whatever, like, okay, is it worth it? Is it worth how I'm going to feel later? Or am I just doing this because I'm feeling kind of sad, or I didn't fuel my body well earlier, or I didn't sleep good last night? Because a lot of times if you have a bad night of sleep, your body is craving carbs and sugar. Mm-hmm. Like it's craving stuff that's bad. And so just really trying to be in tune with how I feel and what I'm eating, and noticing the foods that upset my stomach, and just trying to like be really careful. I think we've been out to eat a handful of times in the past couple months, and every single time we're like, I feel like garbage. I never want to eat out again.
We're never eating out again.
And that's even if you go to a nice place and get like a nice steak, and you think about it, it's like, what are they using to prepare the food? Like, how are they, like, is it all palm oil? Is it all canola oil? Like the things that they're putting in it, and they don't have they're not going to use the best options. They're going to use the cheapest options at a restaurant. It doesn't matter if it's a 5-star restaurant or not. So really paying attention to that, and then just thinking about like how we're teaching the kids and how we're trying to mold their feelings and their thoughts on food, and teach them to make healthier choices versus just saying this is a good food or this is a bad food,
Mm-hmm. And I'd say, I probably should have thought of this too, but another big result that I've seen, and this might sound crazy, is just self-esteem. I was listening to a clip from Joe Rogan where he talks about like, why does he still work out? Because he doesn't need to anymore, right? He's not fighting or anything anymore. But he's like, if I work out really, really hard today, then at least today I know I wasn't a lazy piece of crap.
I mean, it's valid. There's like a high you get after you have a good workout. Yeah, you weren't lazy for the day.
And I would say the same thing when I do my fasting, which I'm gotten pretty consistent, where I don't eat until lunch. I eat a pretty big but healthy lunch, and then don't eat anything until dinner, and eat a small healthy dinner. Like I feel like I wasn't a fat piece of crap that day. Like I did what I was supposed to do, and that just it just builds your self-esteem. And again, that it can work both ways, right? Those negative effects can go into all areas of your life, but when you have those positive effects and the positive self-esteem, that can also have a positive effect on every area of your life, including your work and your relationships and everything else too. So I think increased self-esteem and just feeling better about myself and knowing that I'm trying to do the right thing, it's kind of helped overcome some of those cravings and feeling the need to fill those holes in our life with food or alcohol or anything else,
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is, I've been on this like health journey a little bit longer than you, and I've gone back and forth and back and forth. The change that's happened in both of our lives and our children's lives, now that you've taken control of that and you've stepped into that role of like, yeah, we're not eating this. Yeah, we're not buying this. We're not going to do this, has had such a tremendous, it's made it so much easier for me and so much easier, I think, for the kids to make the changes and to make better choices. And I think that says a lot to the importance of the dad being in that place of leading the family, not only in other areas, but in the health of their family. Like if the dad is focused on being healthy and they're making that a priority in the family, it's going to be easier for the wife to follow that and make those good choices. And it's going to be so much easier for the kids to learn those habits, because kids respect their fathers and they see what their dads do. And they, in turn, that's how they turn out and that's who they become. So for you to be like taking the lead on that and making so many changes, it's so much easier for me to tell the kids like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, we're not going to eat that because that's not good for you. That's not going to make you feel good. We're not going to go get ice cream, or we're not going to do, we're not going to buy those snacks anymore. We're making some different choices. And I don't think that you even know how much of an impact that's been for them and for me to make it easier for us as a whole.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and it has made it so much easier for me. And they know that whenever they ask me for certain things at the store, I can be like, no, Daddy said we weren't doing that. And then the argument's over. I know that I have your support in that. Whereas before I didn't have that support. So like even all the candy that comes into the house from the schools and stuff like that, I've gotten to the point where like, I let them keep it for like 2 days and have a couple pieces, and then I throw it away and say ants got in it. And I know I'm not going to be able to do that forever, but he's like backed me up on that decision, because we just don't want that in the house. I don't want the kids eating that stuff every day and thinking it's okay and it's normal to have those food options all the time.
Yeah. But also we're being selfish because we want their behavior. It just makes life go so much easier when they don't have that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Brooks, he noticed this summer at the last birthday party we're at, he noticed he got a headache a couple hours later. Mm-hmm. And he had 3 pieces of cake. He's a volume eater like me. So he had too much cake, and I didn't say no. And it had a lot of icing on it. And later on, he had a horrible headache.
So we use that as a teaching moment, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we have allowed our kids to eat so much junk that it made them sick before. Do you remember earlier this summer we went to the movies and we just let them have whatever they wanted? And then we went to a really nice steak dinner afterwards. Neither of them could eat. They both had a soda. They both had one of those big bags of candy. And Paul's like, are you going to stop them? I'm like, nah, let's let them learn a lesson. They were both miserable the rest of the night. And I'm never eating that again. I don't ever want it. And so yeah, you can say that that's mean, but it allowed them to see how they were going to feel instead of me fighting with them and saying, you're just not going to eat that because you're not going to feel good. Now, when I say you can't eat all that because it's going to make you feel like garbage, they're like, oh yeah, you're right. It will. I don't want it,
And so better they learn that lesson at the age of 5 than at 40, like us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, that's going to kind of wrap it up for today. I was just going to kind of close this out because we talk about our relationship with God on here, and I would say religious or not, for me it was part of my journey with God. But even if you're not a believer or not sure what you think about all that, I would just encourage you to take personal responsibility. Again, learn from my mistake. I hadn't looked at the back of a food package really in my entire life until recently, and you just start to ask the questions like, why is all of this extra stuff in our food? And how can that possibly be good for me? And how is this affecting my life? You've got to take some personal responsibility about it. And I would say too, if you have to take a hard look in the mirror, but are there certain things in your life that you cannot give up? And for me, for a long time, it was alcohol. And then, for an even longer time, it was sugar. And I'm starting, I think, to turn the corner on that. But, if you can't give something up, I think that's a problem. And that tells you about where you're at, in your journey as a person and as in your journey and your faith as well. Do you have any closing thoughts on this subject?
I think personal responsibility is the most important thing. And I will also say for me, one of the bigger things that I think has influenced my choices over the past few years, especially coming out of COVID, is knowing a lot of people in their 50s and 60s that had some really bad habits for a long time, that their health really took a turn for the worst, or, they lost their life due to that. And kind of making the decision, I don't want to be there. I'm afraid of being there, and I don't want to let you down or let my kids down and put that strain on our family because I'm so sick. And, you know, watching my dad get his health so in check over the last few years was really inspiring for me to be like, okay, if he's twice my age and he can do this, the workouts my dad was doing 2 years ago, I couldn't do, you know, and seeing him make changes and get off of his diabetes medicine and stuff like that was kind of like, okay, I don't know if he's necessarily doing it because he loves me and he doesn't want me to have to lose him, or if he just loves his life and doesn't want to lose it that way or whatever. But I want to do that for my kids. I want to make sure that I'm not only setting them up for success in their life and letting them understand food and how it works and how to fuel their bodies, but I also want to be around and I want to be able to run around with my kids in 20 years. I want to be able to keep up with them on the snow slopes or on the boat or whatever we're doing. And I want to be able to run around with my grandkids. And there are things in life, like your health is something you cannot buy. And I think that in America, we think we can buy just about anything. You cannot buy back your health. It's just not something you can buy back. And that saying is everything is hard, right? Being healthy is hard. Being sick is hard. And I've been both. You know, being married is hard. Being divorced is hard. Choose your hard. And so I'm at a point where I'm choosing the hard way, but the path that I'm choosing is the healthy path because I don't want to deal with the hard later on. So I'm willing to take on that hard now. And I feel like God has really kept me in check on that a lot lately. And I'm very grateful for that.
Gotcha. And I would close by saying this, I guess. If you're, thinking about making a change or you're struggling a little bit, then I would say start small. I mean, for me, reading that book, $1 Million Habits, where the whole point of the book is you institute a new habit every single month. I think that's been the biggest thing that's helped me this year to actually make some lasting changes instead of, because, you try to make 5 or 6 changes at once and it just falls apart, right? You just focus on one small change and do it for 30 days until it becomes a part of you, and then do something else. So maybe if you're just cutting out one thing out of your diet, maybe not cutting out all sugar or whatever it is, whatever you decide you need to do. If you're having a hard time getting started, just make that one small change for 30 days. Next month, make another one. Next month, make another one. And, a year from now, you'll look back and realize of all the good things that you instituted in your life. So that's it.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear your feedback. Until next time, stay salty.
Thanks for listening to the Salty Life podcast. We appreciate you choosing to spend some time with us.
If you like what you've heard today, please like and share on your favorite social media.
And don't forget to click the subscribe button to hear new episodes of the Salty Life podcast.
Until next time, stay salty.